Welcome back to Red Cedar Radar. I am Sydney, joined by Brendan, a little bit of a different version of Brendan today with some camera and technical difficulties. Um, we are going to talk through MSU's new coaching search. That's all the rage on Twitter today. And then we're going to dive into the Iowa game a little bit and give a little bit of a recap on what went right, what went wrong, and kind of talk about where the Spartans go from there and where they have to go from there if they want to be bowl eligible. How are you today, Brendan?
I'm great. I was joking with you earlier. I can do whatever I want back here with no camera. Camera's not working today, so I can pick my nose, cough, sneeze. I can do whatever,
Yeah,
and
less pressure.
and public won't
Yeah.
see it. Yeah.
So we decided to kind of switch up the order of what we were going to talk about today. I kind of had the Iowa recap first, but we decided that the coaching search was much more exciting. And Brendan and a couple of other of the members of the Spartans Illustrated team put out a really great article today about kind of candidates, what MSU will be looking for, what candidates would be looking for in MSU, and kind of where things will go from here after MSU officially, broke up with Mel Tucker recently. Brendan, do you just want to take it away to kind of talk through your article? And also, the article will be linked in the description if you kind of want to follow along as he's going through.
Yeah, a couple of Spartans Illustrated contributors and I, Jeremy and Verbose Dutch, we went put together a list of 15 coaching candidates that we think are realistic and very possible guys that could become the next Michigan State head coach. You'll notice some names we did not include, or Urban Meyer, Deion Sanders, and no, Nick Saban's not coming back to East Lansing. A lot of those are kind of wishful thinking and kind of maybe, I guess, people's dream scenarios. So we narrowed it down to 15 realistic candidates. And my top one personally is Mike Elko. He's a current Duke head coach. He's in his second season, 13-5 overall record. And I know you're going to throw the link to this article in the description so people can kind of follow along here. But he's 46, so he's kind of a great balance between, okay, he has Power 5 head coaching experience, but he's not super old. He's not like 60. He's not 55. You know what I mean? So he's still got some youth to him. One stat I learned earlier today is he has not lost a game by double digits at Duke. Like Duke is not a historic football program. They're really good on the basketball side. Football, not so much. They put a lot of the resources towards basketball as opposed to football. So Mike Elko is probably my top guy. He has a defensive background, was a DC at Bowling Green, Wake Forest, Notre Dame, A&M before getting that Duke job. So, and he improved most of those defenses in his time at each of those schools. So I think he's a safe pick. You kind of know what you're going to get out of him, and I think he should be a strong candidate for the Michigan State job. I'll kind of go quicker for the rest of the guys, but Jonathan Smith's a guy at Oregon State who's performed well above expectations for that program. I think he's in his sixth season. Record is 30-32. So you look at the record, you're like, well, I don't know about that. He's 2 games below 500, but it's Oregon State, right? They're not a blue blood. There's, they're at the bottom of the Pac-12, kind of just in terms of historic program and like where they are in the pecking order there. So Jonathan Smith's done a great job at his alma mater. They have a really good team this year. He took over a bad situation, went 2-10 in his first year, and then went 10-3 last year. And he's on pace. I think they're Oregon State's 4-1 right now, 3-1 or 4-1, something like that. So he's got a good start to this year. Hopefully he can continue that. I think he should be a strong candidate.
Yeah, go ahead. Something that I thought was interesting at the bottom of that was, they stand to see a significant revenue loss with like the whole Pac-12 situation, which is something I hadn't considered. Is someone like him who has kind of built up a program and has been, like you said, came into a bad situation, with things changing again, do you think he'll just want to jump ship? That was something I hadn't considered, and that's an interesting point.
Yeah, that's something I'll touch on with the next head coach. It's Oregon State, Washington State. They don't have a home for next season, right? The Pac-12 is pretty much dissolved. The only 2 teams left are Oregon State and Washington State. And even if the Pac-12 were still around, that's still a significant revenue loss compared to the Big Ten and compared to the SEC. So will that be enough to pry him away from his alma mater? That's something I guess we'll find out. We'll find out if Haller even pursues him. Uh, Another guy in this very similar situation is Jake Dickert at Washington State. He's only 40 years old and he's had pretty good success at Washington State. He's at 14-9 record. He already has two top 25 wins this season. He beat Wisconsin at home and he beat Oregon State at home last week. So Dickert's getting it done on the field. He's a guy that's had success in the transfer portal. Brought over an offensive coordinator in Ben Arbuckle, who he's probably one of the top offensive minds in the country. He's young, like I said. He has Midwest roots, so he's from. I'm not sure where he's from, but he coached at I believe in Wisconsin. He played at Wisconsin Stevens Point, which is a D3 school in Wisconsin, obviously there. So he's got Midwestern ties, and again with the Pac-12 thing, we'll see is it enough to pry Dickert away. He's not. He didn't go to Washington State, so it might be easier to get Dickert away from Washington State than it is Smith from Oregon State. So he's another guy to watch. Brian Hartline, he's the current Ohio State offensive coordinator. He's one of the hottest assistant coach names probably in the country. So uh, he's recruited at a super high level. I mean, you just look at the NFL draft picks he's had, especially in the first round. You have Chris Olave, Jackson Smith Najigba, Garrett Wilson. So he's had a laundry list of top receivers, and that's continuing this year. He's got an elite receiving core, one of the best in the nation with Marvin Harrison, with Emeka Egbuka. So Brian Hartline's a really good recruiter. That's what we know about him. Now, would that translate to a school like Michigan State that's not a blue blood in football? That's kind of a question mark. And he doesn't have any head coaching experience. That's also a question mark. So this is more of kind of a high ceiling, maybe a lower floor hire if Michigan State pursues Hartline. And who knows? We don't even know if Michigan State has the ability to pry him away from Ohio State because he played at Ohio State for 3 years from 2006 to 2008 before he went to the NFL. So Hartline's one of the coordinator names to watch. Another offensive coordinator is Garrett Riley. You probably know his brother is the coach at USC, Lincoln Riley. Garrett's his younger brother. He's 34 years old, so he's young. He's up and coming. He's from the Air Raid tree, Mike Leach coaching tree there. So he's a backup quarterback at Texas Tech. So he has quarterback experience on the offensive side there. He made his name last year. He was the offensive coordinator for TCU, and TCU made that magical run all the way to the national championship game. So Garrett Riley, then after that national championship game, got hired by Clemson, probably one of the top programs in college football right now. And there's been some growing pains at Clemson. They only put up 7 points in a loss against Duke and Mike Elko. Clemson already has a second loss against Florida State, but I still think Riley's a really good coordinator, and he's only 34, so he's young. And same issues though with Hartline's, or not issues, but question marks, is he's never been a head coach before. So if he comes to Michigan State, there probably would be some growing pains, and we'll see how he can recruit. So Garrett Riley is also an offensive coordinator to watch. I think this is the last offensive coordinator on the list, but Sean Lewis, he's the current offensive coordinator at Colorado. He's 37, but he's one of the very rare cases where you have an under 40 years old coach that has head coaching experience. Lewis coached for 5 years at Kent State before getting that Colorado job. He went 24-31, and I know that's not the best record, but just the resources at Kent State and the funding is absolutely awful compared to some of the other MAC schools like Toledo, Bowling Green, and then some of the Michigan schools. So yeah, Lewis, tough situation at Kent State. Went from the Kent State head coaching position to become the offensive coordinator at Colorado under Deion Sanders. A great move, in my opinion, just to get his name out there a little bit more. So I think he'll get another head coaching job eventually. He played as a tight end at Wisconsin. He coached in the Midwest at Nebraska, Omaha, at Akron, at Eastern Illinois, Bowling Green as well. He got a Power 5 job with Syracuse as a co-offensive coordinator. And then, I went to Kent State, and he's best known for when he was at Kent State, his offense was called the Flash Fast offense. They were one of the fastest offenses in college football. They actually gave Georgia a little bit of trouble last season when they played. So Lewis is a name to watch. And if you watch Colorado, which I'm sure a lot of people have, just looking at the TV numbers that they're drawing, but they have a really good offense. So, and I think Lewis is should be credited a little bit for that.
So here's a
Uh,
question. Do you
yeah,
think that Michigan State will go in the direction of someone that does not have head coaching experience? Because I feel like there's obviously there's value in someone that is a head coach right now, but there is also value in bringing someone in and letting them kind of like build as they go. What's your opinion on that?
yeah, it's all about how much risk Alan Haller is willing to take, and whoever's in that coaching decision, whoever's making that decision at the end there, it's all about how much risk are you willing to take. Are you willing to say, "Hey, I know we're going to have some growing pains for maybe a year or two or three, but let's go get this young up and coming guy who doesn't have coaching experience, but let's go get him before maybe." Like Florida gets or Miami gets or
Yeah.
throw out whatever school you want. So it's all about risk, and yeah, the safer hire would be a guy with Power Five coaching experience. But yeah, like I said, all about risk, what you're willing to do.
Yeah. I would love to know how different of a conversation this hire is than when they were looking to hire Mel Tucker. And if they're looking, if their criteria is different or how different, I don't know, just like that inside stuff that I wonder now that all of this has transpired since they just recently went through a hire with Mel Tucker, how that process is looking now. And I think we'll find out more of that as it goes. Although Haller came out today and said, it's going to be pretty confidential, tight lipped. So maybe we won't know too much as it goes along. But that's just something I'll be curious to know.
Yeah, another thing about that, the last coaching search compared to this one, Michigan State's in a much better spot now than they were, or with this coaching search than they were with the last coaching search. Because if you remember, D'Antonio stepped down, I think it was either late January or February. So it was way like a month after like all the coaches around the country got their new homes. So Michigan State had to poach a guy from a Power Five job to come to East Lansing. So yeah, this one they're better off. It's in the season. You can get out ahead of the rest of the country because only one other team has an open head coaching position, and that's Northwestern. So Michigan State right now is the best
Hmm.
available head coaching job.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Okay, keep going on your list. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, next on the list, Kane Womack. He's the current South Alabama head coach at the Group of Five level. He's in his third season there. He's been doing pretty good. He's only 36, so he's another young, up and coming guy with head coaching experience. Like I said, third season. In his second season last year, he won his division in the Sun Belt. I think they went 10-3. And he's doing really good in the transfer portal. I think 21 Power Five transfers over the last two cycles. So he's getting guys out of the portal, which is kind of something you want to look at in the new era of college sports here. And he's having success against those Power Five teams on the field as well. I think a couple of weeks ago they beat Oklahoma State 33-7. They went to Stillwater and absolutely pounded them. It wasn't even the game. So big domination there by South Alabama, and then they only lost last year at UCLA by 1 point. So Womack fields competitive football teams. You're going to get that out of him. Can he recruit at a Power Five level? I mean, that's something. Again, how much risk is Alan Haller willing to take? So that's something with Kane Womack, only 36. Another guy in the Sun Belt's John Summerall. He's the current Troy head coach. He's 41 years old. Is in his second season. He's from Huntsville, Alabama, so from down south. Uh, I think, yeah, Jeremy wrote this one, and he said that, yeah, I don't really see Summerall moving this far north to East Lansing, which I agree with. I do think he's kind of going to be a guy that's going to hold out at Troy and kind of wait for an SEC job or maybe like an ACC job, some stay in the kind of the southeast portion of the country there. But he's done some good things at Troy. 15-4 record's pretty good. He's a defensive mind, went 12-2 in his first year. Uh, was an assistant coach for Neil Brown. Neil Brown's now at West Virginia. He was co-defensive coordinator at Kentucky previously. So Summerall's a defensive guy. He's one of the top coaches at the Group of Five level. So he's definitely someone to keep an eye on. I don't think he's probably going to be a finalist or probably not in the top 10 most realistic guys that Michigan State will hire, but he's someone to keep an eye on. Lance Leipold at Kansas. Next guy, he's 59 years old. Uh, this guy's got plenty of head coaching experience. 158 and 57 head coaching record. Spent 8 seasons at Wisconsin Whitewater, which I believe is a D3 team. 6 seasons at Buffalo. He's in his third season at Kansas, and we know Kansas not necessarily known for their football, more known for their basketball, but he's had a tremendous turnaround at Kansas. Uh, 2021 they had a losing record, didn't make a bowl, but 2022 they started the year 5-0, hosted College Game Day, which was huge for them. Uh, that undefeated streak was ruined by TCU and a loss at home, but still a really good season for Kansas. They made it to a bowl game. I think they finished 6-7, and this year they're off to a good start. I think they're 4-1 right now. He's got one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, so Leipold knows how to find talent, whether it's transfer portal recruiting. He just knows how to find talent, has a good eye for talent. He wins wherever he's been at. So Wisconsin Whitewater, he's done at Buffalo. He was successful at. In Kansas, he's been really successful there. Obviously, the concern is he's 59 years old. How long would he last at Michigan State? Who knows, just given his age. Staying in the state of Kansas, Chris Kleiman is a Kansas State head coach. He's done a tremendous job there. 105 and 34 is his career record. He spent 1 season at Loras, which is a D3 school, 5 seasons at North Dakota State, which is probably the best program at the FCS level. I love this stat. He spent 5 seasons at North Dakota State, won 5 conference championships and 4 national championships. I mean, you can't get much better than that. So Kleiman just knows how to win. Won the Big 12 last year. A lot of people get that mixed up because they think TCU made the national championship, but Kansas State won the conference. So he's won the conference, won a Power 5 conference last year, and like I said, the guy just wins, and he has a really good offensive coordinator in Colin Klein, who's only 34 years old, so he can kind of bring that youthful exuberance, kind of that side of things. If Kleiman would bring him over to Michigan State, which I would imagine he would if he gets hired here. I know he said on a radio show that he's not interested in the Michigan State job, or he's not a candidate. But obviously, I mean, what are you going to say in that situation? Yeah, I am, like, you know what I mean? So next guy on the list we have is Charles Huff, who's the current Marshall head coach. He's in his third season there. He's only 40 years old. A lot of people like him just because he comes from the Nick Saban tree. He coached a couple seasons under Saban at Alabama as an assistant head coach and running backs coach. He's spent time in the NFL. He spent time under James Franklin at Penn State, at Mississippi State. He spent time there. PJ Fleck, coach under PJ Fleck at Western Michigan. So Huff has a lot of experience for only being 40 years old. In his third head coaching season at Marshall, 20-10 is his head coaching record. So he's another guy that's kind of he's only 40 years old, so he's never coached at a Power 5 level before, but still he's had a little bit of success recruiting, but Marshall's still probably one of the better G5 programs, but those recruiting rankings have kind of lagged below expectations. So he's got to keep an eye on. I don't think he'll be heavily considered, but he's definitely got to keep an eye on as we can kind of continue down the list. Matt House, I don't think he'll be super sought out after, especially given what LSU's defense did this past weekend against Ole Miss, giving up 55 points and 706 yards. If you haven't figured out, he's the LSU defensive coordinator right now. And LSU fans probably aren't too happy with him given what happened on Saturday. But he is a Michigan native from Harrison, went to Michigan State. So it'd be kind of dumb not to include him. But yeah, I don't think Michigan State fans would be too pleased. And a more realistic path for House would be to find a group of 5 head coaching gig before just kind of get feet wet with the head coaching position, because he doesn't have any head coaching experience. So get his feet wet. If he does good, then he can get some Power 5 looks. So him jumping from LSU defensive coordinator, given what the LSU defense looks like this year, to the Michigan State head coaching jobs just seems unlikely. Another name, Bill O'Brien. He's currently with the New England Patriots. I'm sure a lot of people know the name. He spent 2 years at Penn State. He took over in a tough situation at the height of that Paterno scandal not too long ago. He spent 7 years at with the Houston Texans. Combine those two, his career record as a head coach is 69-61. He's 53 years old, so a little bit older than some of the other candidates we talked about. But he's coached a lot of good quarterbacks. Brian Hoyer. Uh, no, he did he. I'm not. Don't quote me on that, but he has plenty of experience in the coaching game. We'll say that. So Josh Henson's another name, USC offensive coordinator. He's 48 years old. He's had success at Oklahoma State playing. Uh, and we know USC for their offense under Lincoln Riley, but Henson doesn't get the credit he deserves, really, because he's the offensive coordinator there. Everyone just says, oh, it's Riley's offense, but Henson does a lot of the work as well. So he was offensive coordinator for Missouri back in 2009, got hired there, has had a multitude of other jobs, came back to Oklahoma State for a little bit, went to Texas A&M for a little bit under Jimbo Fisher. So he's got 25 years of coaching experience as an assistant coach. He's 48 years old, if I haven't mentioned that already. And he's been a good recruiter in the past. USC, Texas A&M, LSU. He's been in a lot of blue blood programs that can recruit at a super high level. So will that translate to Michigan State? Like we said earlier with some of the other guys, who knows? Again, no head coaching experience, so it's a little bit more of a risk there. The last guy, I'm people are familiar with him, but Harlan Barnett. I mean, it'd be dumb not to include kind of the acting / interim head coach. Spent 3 games, or he's coached 3 games at Michigan State. Obviously, 0-3. Michigan State fans are familiar with him. Coached under D'Antonio at Cincinnati when D'Antonio went to Michigan State. He went along with him. He's been at Michigan State since 2007 and went to Florida State for 2 years. Came back under Tucker. So Barnett, it's highly unlikely he gets the job based on the results so far. And I think Michigan State fans would be a little bit underwhelmed, especially if he gets hired.
That was a lot of work, Brendan. You did fabulously. The article is great. Tons of detail. Like I said, it's linked in the description. And I think this is probably something that you guys will be updating as we find out tidbits of information. I think there's a lot of different choices, which is exciting. And I liked your point about, this search is very different than the one before. And you're right. We're kind of starting off on the right foot. No offense to Northwestern, but I think, all eyes are on what Michigan State can do about getting a new guy. And I'm kind of excited to see where they go and kind of what information gets leaked as we go through the season. Although, I don't want to quit on the season now, of course, because there's still many games left. But I think this will be kind of on the forefront of everyone's mind, more so than maybe a bowl game. But we'll talk about that when we talk about the Iowa game. Anything else that you want to add about the coaching search just in general, Brendan?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to follow over the next month or two. And Michigan State's in a good spot in terms of the coaching search. It was better that they got Tucker out sooner rather than later so they can get started on this. I know Haller
Yeah.
released a letter today. He's gonna keep info tight to his chest. He's not gonna share a lot, obviously. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Right. Moving on from the coaching search, we want to go back in time and talk about the Iowa game. Uh, MSU received their third straight loss for on their first road game of the season. I honestly, I wasn't really sure what was gonna happen. Iowa has had their own struggles recently. In my, you know, um, preview episode, I talked about their struggles against Penn State and kind of how everything fell apart for them there. So I wasn't sure what was going to happen. The Spartans had what I would say was a decent performance throughout the first 3 quarters. And then everything just fell apart altogether at once, and they were not able to regain their composure. Any just like notes off the top of your head before we kind of get into the nitty gritty of things, Brendan?
Yeah, I thought they played probably their best game of the Big Ten slate, including Washington. Best
Yeah,
game against a Power Five opponent. Did
yeah,
they finish it? No, they did not. Obviously, we'll get into the turnovers and that stuff.
yeah. Yeah, honestly, I had kind of gotten comfortable, and maybe it's my fault that we lost because I got comfortable. Then Michigan State had a quite terrible punt, leading to a punt return for a touchdown. And then just like the amount of turnovers and penalties and just silly mistakes added up, and they were not able to like rectify those mistakes in the game. They just kept piling on, and when it gets to that point in a close game on the road, you can't have those mistakes. My question for you is, kind of skipping topics for a second, is Noah Kim still the guy for Michigan State?
I'm gonna say no, but I'm not confident in that because I don't trust Caton Hauser behind
I
him.
know. I know.
But if I'm the Michigan State coach, if I'm Harlan Barnett, I would give Hauser the reps over Kim. I know
Yeah,
Kim's more experienced. He's a redshirt senior, I believe, and Hauser's redshirt freshman. So obviously Kim has the experience advantage, but what Kim has proven very little to me over the past 5 games.
I know.
He did good against Central Michigan and Richmond, but that's Central Michigan and that's Richmond. What
I
he's done in
know.
the last 3 has been well below what I expect out of a Michigan State quarterback. Now, will Caton Hauser meet that expectation? I don't know. I mean, hopefully I think he should get some snaps against Rutgers in meaningful minutes, and then he gets a chance to prove himself. But even if Hauser makes the same mistakes that Kim's making, I'd rather have him take those bumps and bruises and learn along the way rather than Kim, because Kim
Yeah,
is not the future of the program. Caton Hauser is.
yeah, I agree. I just think something has to change. And if they don't even try it, you know, I'm gonna need to know more about why they're not even trying it. Is Caden Hauser that much of an underdeveloped guy? And I really don't think that's the case. I think they have to try it. There has to be some sort of spark or energy that bringing in someone new might bring, would add to the team, add to the game. So, okay, do you want to talk through some of those turnovers a little bit? What does MSU need to do to clean up their performance for their next game?
Yeah, a lot of it's just bad passes by Noah Kim. I know the one in the end zone was just a bad pass or it was a bad read. It was, something not on the same page. I don't know what exactly it was. It was the receiver's fault, not sure. But either way, these turnovers need to be cleaned up. I mean, four
Yeah,
turnovers today, or 4 turnovers this week against Iowa. Michigan State, not sure the exact statistic, but they're one of the worst in the nation in turnovers lost. And you can't win games when you're given teams possessions, especially when you're in the red zone like that.
right.
Interception by DeGene when he caught it over his shoulder in the back corner of the end zone. You cannot have red zone turnovers when you drive the field and you get no points out of it.
Yeah,
That's a
so much
killer.
wasted time.
Yeah, exactly, and that's just a momentum killer as well because
Yeah,
you're driving down the field, team is feeling confident, and then you throw a pick.
yeah,
It's mood killer, momentum killer, and it's just stuff that can't happen if you want to win football games. And the 10
yeah.
penalties is also an issue.
Yeah, and Harlan Barnett in his interviews has said over and over, "We're gonna clean it up. We're gonna clean it up," and I've seen like no changes. And how do you clean those things up? I mean, you talk about it in practice and you work on it in practice, but what is it? Is it just that the team is unfocused during all of this turmoil, or is it that we don't have the right guys and we have underperforming players? I don't know what it is, I guess, but he keeps saying that they need to be cleaned up, and I have yet to see that be
Yeah,
executed at all.
Yeah, that question is for the coaches to figure out. That's not for us to figure out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So I mean, it boils down to I think it's partly in the coaches, but yeah, players have to be held accountable too. You know what I mean? So now in the
yeah,
NIL world, these players are getting paid based on
absolutely.
their performance. So there's kind of got to be a little bit more criticism on the players than maybe in the past because now they're going to be treated as adults. Someone is paying you money for your performance on the
Yeah,
field, and if you're not held to that performance standard, then people have the right to kind of criticize you. So
yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point, and something that hasn't really been considered in years past. So that's a really good point. One stat that I thought was really interesting was that MSU's third down conversion percentage was 20%, while Iowa's was 15.4%. So just like dismal numbers all around. Um, Iowa's percentage was 15.4% and they won the game. What does that mean for Michigan State? And do you think, just your a pure opinion, do you think they can clean this up? Or kind of is all hope lost?
I'm very skeptical just
I
because I
know.
have not seen I've seen a little bit of improvement, just team performance, but I have not seen improvement in terms of the turnovers and penalties from the
Yeah.
Washington game to the Maryland game to the Iowa game. It's
Yeah.
just I'm just watching the same mental mistakes over and over, and it's getting tiring to watch. I'm
I
sure
know.
Michigan State fans feel the same way. And
Yeah.
you look at the team stats: Michigan State 20 first downs to Iowa's 15 first downs. Michigan State 349 total yards to Iowa's 222. Michigan State largely outplayed Iowa. Now,
Yeah.
does that matter in the final score? No, it does not, because obviously there's other factors, turnovers, penalties. You throw those in, and Iowa wins the game. That was just such an Iowa way to win a football game, too. They wait for the opponent to make the mistakes, and they capitalize off them. Obviously, the punt return, special teams are huge. The punt return
Hmm.
touchdown was a big momentum swing in favor of Iowa. That's kind of that really when he scored that touchdown, Cooper DeJean, great punt return, but it just sucked all the life
Yeah.
out of Michigan State. It really did.
Well, and I think in addition to that, them being on the road, so that happening at home for Iowa, the fans, it would suck the life out of you at home, but then at least you'd be at home with your own fans. You didn't have as much of that on the road against Iowa. And I think it was a sold out crowd from what I read. Uh, so that did not help either. Any other points overall from Iowa leading into Michigan State's next game?
Yeah, I think the bye week's coming at a right time. Take the take a
I
couple
agree.
days
I
off for
agree.
Michigan State. Yep, take a couple days off, get back at practice, and have some extra time to get ready for Rutgers, who plays, I believe, this week at Wisconsin. So Rutgers has a tough game this week. You have the rust advantage going into that game at Rutgers, and Rutgers is not a bad team. They play good defense. They challenged Michigan when they played them at the Big House a couple weeks ago. They challenged them
Yeah.
in the first and second quarter. Michigan pulled away in the second half, but Rutgers is not a bad team. So this is going to be a challenge for Michigan State. I honestly think Rutgers might be favored. Now that doesn't mean that they're going to win, but still proves that Rutgers is not a bad team.
Yeah. Yeah. The bye week comes at a good time for me because I need a reset. And of course, Brendan, we know it's all about me. Um, so Michigan State will face Rutgers on the 14th. It looks like it's a noon game. I'll have a preview of that before that game comes around. Anything else to add, Brendan, about either of our topics before we sign off today?
I do want to make a point that that Rutgers game is a week before the Michigan game. 'Cause after the Rutgers game, Michigan comes to East Lansing, so it's a big, it's a huge game to just for
Yeah.
momentum purposes for Michigan State. They go in to Piscataway or wherever Rutgers is located. I think it's Piscataway. If they go in there and beat them, that they'll have some momentum going in, coming back home and playing Michigan. It was a really
That's
good
a
team.
that's a good point, Brendan. That's a good point. I don't even want to talk about that game yet. We'll get there when we get a little closer. Um, I think that's all I had for this episode. Like I said, Brendan and the team will be updating that coaching search um, article and kind of pumping some more stuff out on Spartans Illustrated about that topic, which I know everyone is dying to know more about. So check that out in the description. This video will be on YouTube, or the audio will be wherever you listen to your podcasts. I highly recommend subscribing to Spartans Illustrated. Like I said, more football coverage and basketball. Let me see. Basketball scrimmages. I think I have a day here. Well, overall, they're just back this month.
And
Is that true, Brendan?
Basketball Media Day is Tuesday, so October 3rd is Basketball Media Day. So we'll have coverage from that. So a lot of basketball coverage to come here.
Basketball is coming, which is very exciting. Um, I think what is it? The MSU Madness is October 13th,
Yep, the Michigan State
Friday the
Madness will be
13th.
October
Yep.
13th. Yep.
Yep. Okay. So we'll probably talk about that or, talk about basketball in general coming very soon. Thanks so much for listening. Although, the second part of this episode wasn't as fun to talk about. It's good stuff to break down as we look ahead to Rutgers. And I will have a preview episode with someone from Rutgers coming out before that game. Thanks so much for listening. See you later.